It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
All right, this next question is from James, and I like this one because I feel like we deal with this a lot with our clients that we work with. Now, James said, do you count RSUs, restricted stock units, and options in the 20 to 25% savings rate if we don't plan on touching them? We are saving 25% of our AGI for retirement, not including the RSUs and options received through work. Is that too much? So a lot of folks, part of their compensation is, the W-2 that they make, the wages they earn. But if you work for a publicly traded company, it's not uncommon for a big portion or a portion of your compensation to come through stock in that company, whether it be through restricted units that you earn over time or options that you earn over time and can make a decision on how to handle. So when it comes to our personal savings rate and building wealth, are there things we should think about specifically as it relates to those pieces of our puzzle and how much we're saving outside of those pieces of the puzzle?
Well, I think this is tying into a bigger question, and I think this is a good clarifier. That I don't know that I've ever covered this a lot. I do count that as part of your savings rate for several reasons. First of all, when you're doing RSUs and stock options and other things that you're actually, our employee stock purchase plan, you're actually allocating that money and it will turn into investment capital for you at some point. Now, we don't know what the market value will be. Hopefully it will be better. But that is definitely saving for, investment assets. Mm-hmm. So I do think it counts as your 20 to 25%. I think where this gets a little gray is people say, well, what about my house? A portion of my monthly mortgage payment is principal. So shouldn't I count that towards my 20, 25%? The answer on that is no, because that's actually a use asset. Just like when you pay principal on your car, principal on your house, those are use assets that you're actually living in, as the name implies, using in your everyday life. It's not something that necessarily will provide retirement money. Now, look, there's always going to be people that say, yeah, but my house is appreciating so much. I know I'm going to downsize at some point, and then that will be my retirement. Well, I'll let you count it once you do that. But while you're living in it, because remember, bad stuff, volatility is a lonely person that it's an extrovert, has to be around friends at all times. So typically market volatility will happen when real estate's getting crushed, unemployment is spiking. All these things will happen at the same time, and it's usually not liquid when all those bad things in the world are going on. So that's why I don't count use assets as savings when you're paying those things down, but I do count RSUs, stock options. Now, there is a part, and Bo, I'll leave this for you and let you add your point, that you can have a little bit extra risk when you have your working capital tied into your financial capital.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Let's say that you're someone and as part of your compensation, 25% of your compensation is awarded to you as RSUs or options. You may think to yourself, hey, well, I'm not going to spend that. That's great. I've already got my 25% savings covered, right? If 25% of my comp comes that way, I don't have to save anything else because I'm already checking that box. Well, what most often happens is when we are granted options or when we're granted restricted stock, it usually vests over a certain period of time. And I have to be there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years before I get access to it. Well, with RSUs, it's pretty easy. That vests and I pay tax on it, and then I can decide, do I want to keep holding the stock or do I want to sell it and diversify? I think once you make that choice to sell and diversify, I think then it counts as part of your savings rate because then it actually is deployed as capital. And here's why. Options, you have the option to make a move on that stock. And most often when you're granted stock options, you have a 10-year window in which you can choose to exercise those. We have a employee here at the firm who previously worked with a large Fortune 100 company for a number of years, and he had a substantial amount of stock options in that company, and that company had been around for a long time. It had done really, really well over the years for decades and decades and decades. So it was by all thoughts a safe, a solid investment. Well, one of the things that they kind of talked about the company is, hey, don't ever exercise those options because the stock keeps going up. It keeps going up, keeps going up, keeps going up. Well, that's true until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is if you are someone who has options and the company you're with just happens to have a dip or a downturn right around the time that your options expire, and they go below what your strike price is, they actually turn to zero. So this thing that could have had a lot of value ends up having no value at all. So I think when it comes to your incentives, you ought to think about a way to manage all the different pieces in conjunction with the other parts of your portfolio and the other parts of your saving so that you don't lose control of your financial circumstance. So I think you can include it in your savings rate, but I think you have to kind of do it with a plan in place of how you're going to turn it from company capital into diversified capital.
I like that. You kind of added a filter, or a little bit of a gauntlet. You got to make it sure it goes through these checklists before you truly get to count it.
Love it. And by the way, this kind of stuff gets a little nuanced.
Yeah.
If you are someone who has a lot of incentives or a lot of your compensation flows that way and you don't have a plan in place, that's probably a great indicator that it might be time for you to take it to the next level, that it might be time for you to reach out for professional help because those things can be very, very nuanced.